This isn't the only legal case against Trump. So why all the attention on this one?
Yeah, so Trump is embroiled in 4 criminal cases in total, and this one is getting a lot of attention because it's the first to go to trial and maybe the only one to conclude before the election. There's also jail time on the line, and Trump, being who he is, being a former president, gives this that instant massive spotlight. Okay, so what's the case about? Well, it's often described as hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels and others made right before the 2016 presidential election and then unlawfully marked as legal fees. Now, to get more technical, the actual legal charges are 34 counts of falsifying business records to cover up a crime, that crime being fraud for the purpose of hiding the hush money payments from voters, which in New York State breaks election laws. So that's what makes these charges a Class E felony. Now, all that said, Adrienne, if any other person were facing these charges, we would likely never hear about it. And that's because of all the criminal charges, Class E is the least serious. So criminal charges are categorized as A, B, C, D, E, Class A being the most serious, so first-degree murder, for example. Judges are typically more lenient on sentencing for Class E felonies unless you're a repeat offender, which we know Trump is not. So it's a very real possibility that even with a guilty verdict, Donald Trump walks out of that courtroom at the end of this trial.
Okay, so we're now 3 weeks into this trial. And Alex, I really want to ask you, what do you think's been the most standout moment up until now?
Yeah, I'd like to go back for a minute to the testimony of David Pecker.
Okay, hold up for just 1 second, Alex. I just want to remind people of who we're talking about here. So this is David Pecker. He was the publisher of the National Enquirer, right?
Exactly. And Kris is exactly right. Falsification of business records is only a felony if it's covering up another crime. And the alleged crime in this case is election finance fraud. David Pecker ties this to the election. He testified that in August of 2015, he met at Trump Tower with Donald Trump and with Michael Cohen to explain that he would be the eyes and ears of the campaign, to offer to help the campaign by buying and burying stories that were unflattering to Donald Trump. And he did so in a couple of cases and alerted the campaign to the Stormy Daniels story as well. So it connects Trump and Cohen and everyone involved in this story to David Pecker, who connects it all to the election.
Okay, firstly, I love that you're in a busy New York hotel. It's loud. It could only be loud for New York. But Kris, whose testimony stood out for you? And maybe before you start answering, I'm going to guess that we're talking about Stephanie Clifford, otherwise known as Stormy Daniels.
Correct. I mean, Stormy Daniels was memorable, yes. Legally significant, no. I mean, she said as much on the stand that she doesn't know anything about Trump's business records. And remember, Trump isn't being tried for having sexual affairs with women in this case. But here's why her appearance stood out. It was dramatic, emotional, and at times even uncomfortably comical, even awkward, given the subject matter, this alleged sexual encounter between her and Trump back in 2007. And Adrienne, she went into salacious details. What Trump wore, how it happened, how long it took, and then it got volatile because of that. There were 2 calls for a mistrial from Trump's lawyers because they felt Daniels said too much about sex, when that's not what the case is about, they argued. And then finally, just her appearance in that courtroom really solidified just how strange and uncharted of a moment this is in American history. Imagine a porn star, a president, a judge, and a jury. I mean, that was the scene for those 2 days of her testimony. It was hard to look away, even if you wanted to.
Yeah, I bet. While we're talking about star witnesses, I mean, we're really missing one, right? We have to talk about this man. This is Michael Cohen. We've already mentioned his name a few times. He was Trump's former lawyer for many years, really a critical voice in this.
That's right. He's a big part of the prosecution's case. Why is he the star witness? Yeah, I keep thinking about those Jenga blocks and how you have that one block that holds the whole thing together, and if you pull it out, the whole thing comes crashing down. Michael Cohen is kind of that block for the entire prosecution's case. He's the only witness who can claim he has direct knowledge of Donald Trump allegedly falsifying these business records. He's the only witness who's present in every part of the story that leads up to the alleged crimes. So the prosecution needs to make sure Michael Cohen's testimony holds up, that block stays in place, that the jury believes him. And for the defense, you can believe they'll put all their effort in trying to dislodge that block, meaning attack Cohen's credibility, even bring up the fact that this is a guy who's already gone to jail for making these hush money payments.
And Cohen's past really produced some of the most colorful moments of this trial. I mean, it was actually quite staid in there in the 2 days I've been in the actual courtroom so far. But when the cross-examination started, when Cohen started getting grilled about things he has said and done in the past, the times he said that he wants to see Donald Trump locked up like an animal, to go to jail, they really were trying to chip away at his credibility. And you could hear jurors stifle laughs when they heard some of the very colorful things that Cohen said in the past. Some of the things I can't repeat on TV because they're too vulgar. And you'd actually hear some of the Republicans in the room, making a political pilgrimage there to support Donald Trump, potential cabinet members in a future Trump administration who are coming there to show their support. Well, they started laughing too, and they appeared to be quite pleased with the cross-examination after what had been a pretty somber and sober opening to the Cohen testimony.
So, hey, Alex, you talked about Republicans in the courtroom. Everything's political here, right? So let's look at some polling data. Here's a question. Would you vote for Republican candidate Donald Trump or Democratic candidate Joe Biden if Donald Trump was found not guilty, 46%, guilty without prison, 39%, guilty and prison, 37%? What do you make of those figures, Alex?
I mean, that's huge. I mean, a drop of 7%, 9% in a presidential election makes all the difference in the results of the race. I will add a big caveat to that in a moment, but I just want to say that people are looking closely at this trial as potentially the only thing visible on the horizon that could actually change the trajectory of this race right now. Because if you're being honest, Donald Trump has got to be considered the front runner at this point, or certainly is by most people. If this were any other election involving any other candidate than Donald Trump, you'd be looking at some of the numbers in some of the swing states and saying, he's favored to win at this point. And not a decline in gas prices has helped Joe Biden. Inflation softening hasn't helped Joe Biden. So people are looking at this trial and saying, well, maybe this might help Joe Biden. That said, I would add a big heap of salt when looking at those numbers, because one other thing you might notice from that chart that you just showed is that Joe Biden's numbers don't go up. So these voters say, well, maybe I won't vote for Trump if he's convicted of something, but they're not shifting to Biden, which tells me that there is a likelihood that they're telling pollsters one thing in May of 2024 about a hypothetical scenario, and it's not entirely clear it will be something that holds up until November.
All right, Alex Panetta, Kris Reyes, thank you.